Hey everyone, this is Steve Good, and welcome back to our episode of The Coin Chat. Today we're going to be talking about, is it too late to start in Bitcoin? And welcome back, Yuri, for our episode today to talk about it.
Hey Steve, thank you again for having me back. This is awesome, and I'm very excited about today's topic because it's one that I'm really curious about, and I get asked that a lot. But before we jump into that, and I've got a lot of questions for you, I'm just curious, have you tried to buy anything in person with Bitcoin?
How did you know?
I had a feeling.
Well, the funny thing is I've actually started to do this as a weekly experiment, and I've started to document them. Because I thought, actually, if I start collecting these as little nuggets, they're funny, and just share them every week. So, in fact, yes, this past week I did. I was flying, and I was at the airport, and I wanted a coffee. And I thought, what better way to get a coffee than with a little bit of Bitcoin? So I went to the counter, and I say to the guy, can I get a flat white? Yep, no problem. I said, can I pay with Bitcoin? Because I don't have my wallet with me. Well, what do you mean, can you pay with Bitcoin? I said, with Bitcoin. He said, do you have Bitcoin? I've never seen it. I've always wanted to see what it is. I'm really curious. Like, what does it look like? And I thought, it's a shame. I needed a coin. If I just had like a fake coin, I could have probably socially engineered to pay for this coffee with a little fake coin. He probably would have given me the coffee and said, look, we got our first Bitcoin payment.
Oh my God. Yes, you could have. Oh my God.
So he honestly had no idea what Bitcoin was. He just heard about it and was like so curious. He wanted to see it for himself.
That's amazing.
In the end, I said to him, I've actually got my wallet, but it's a Bitcoin credit card. Is that okay? But I don't know if our sales system can handle Bitcoin. I said, don't worry about it. The card will do all the work.
Yeah.
And of course, it was a Bitcoin credit card and it worked just fine. But he was more amazed by the fact that I was even paying in Bitcoin and didn't understand what the hell was going on.
Oh gosh. So that slightly reminds, so there's a fake article that's circulating right now, but,
many.
Right. But the concept of it is hilarious. Apparently somebody wrote the story about this guy in New York who was taking Chuck E. Cheese coins and like grinding off the top of them and like writing bees on them to try to sell them off. I fact checked it. It's totally fake, but this kind of just reminded me of that. I'm like, you could potentially use some Chuck E. Cheese coins and just write Bitcoin on them and see where that takes you.
Or you just go on to Amazon or eBay and buy a bunch of fake Bitcoins and start going around trying to use them. And if that doesn't work, do a magic trick and make the coin disappear.
Oh my gosh, that's the next iteration of this.
Yeah, and I've been practicing the whole disappearing coin trick with my kids anyway. They've actually figured out how I do it now. They're only 3 and 5, and they're like, Papa, it's over here now.
Oh, they've already.
I can't trick my kids anymore. They're always amazed that the coin disappeared, but they always know where to find it.
You've got built-in hecklers. That's awesome.
Yeah, but they'll end up being magicians one day. Who knows?
Oh yeah, they're gonna start pulling off those coin tricks at school very soon.
Yeah.
Just wait.
No, the Bitcoin tricks.
Exactly, the Bitcoin tricks. And they're gonna amaze their teachers and suddenly start selling Bitcoin to their teachers.
That's it. They're going to be buying their grades with Bitcoin.
So let's jump in. Again, so Bitcoin has been taking off. I think as of right now, I'm recording this, it's in the 17,000s, even though it had a little bit of a dip because of what Coinbase did last night. But
it even hit 20,000 as well, so it's been kind of all over the place in the last few days. Yeah,
it is all over the place. A year ago, it was around 1,000 a coin, and now it's close to 20,000 a coin in some places. And we have Ethereum and Litecoin doing the same kind of stuff. Again, every time it goes up a little higher, there's always people calling it a bubble. And there's always people who are just now discovering it, who want to get into the space, but think they have missed the run. So is it too late?
Remember? No, I mean, do you remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago when everyone kept saying that, how much can Facebook rise? How much can it grow? How much can the share price really go up? How are they going to monetize? And there were all these questions about user growth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's interesting is that Tom Lee, who's an analyst who's got his own hedge fund over in New York called Fundstrat, and has done his own analysis. He's got some fantastic videos you can find if you Google Tom Lee, CNBC. And he's done a comparison of the growth of the social media companies like Facebook and compared it to the rise of Bitcoin and the user growth story.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is there's a 94% correlation in the growth of the numbers of people using each platform.
Wow.
And what's interesting is Bitcoin's just at the beginning. Facebook is much more mature and much further along. So, what that tells me is, people that are saying it's a bubble simply lack a complete understanding of the fact that less than 1% of the world's population is even on Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. The population has 7 billion plus people, and there's maybe 5 million people, or 50 million people, 50 million people that might have coins, Bitcoin and other altcoins that they've already invested in. That's like 0.7% of the world's population. When we get to 10% of the world's population, then let's talk about bubbles and topping out, or people not being able to get in, or being in economies where they can't get started or whatever. But I think there's a long way to go before we've hit bubble territory. And I just think that because Bitcoin has become such a phenomenon so quickly, and it's become such a global institution and global experience, I think people just don't quite know how to read it or deal with it, because it's moving at a pace faster than what Facebook did. And all the naysayers of Facebook aren't naysayers anymore, because the user growth proved itself. And if we're on the same sort of trajectory of growth, then HODL.
How do you value Bitcoin and, I guess, feel strong enough to hold it for a long period of time?
So, there's analysts out there saying it's going to go places, and there's other analysts who, of course, calling it the tulip bulb craze, and calling it a Ponzi scheme, or calling it, already at its peak. But like I say, my reasons for holding or telling other people to hold is simply because the number of users actually using it relative to the amount of interest that's being generated and created, the fact that it's even in the news every day, already tells me that there's an interest in it that's gaining momentum. But, in terms of the number of people who actually have it, it's significantly lower than the number of people who are aware of it. So when we move from awareness to actual acquisition, then I think we're in a different place. And when you start hearing about the grandmas and grandpas that are using their pension money to start buying Bitcoin, I might be more worried then. But right now, I think it's more of a global, growing awareness, but it hasn't reached the level of social consciousness where if you walk down the street and ask everybody about it, they've even heard of it. Most people don't even know what it is, haven't even heard of it, aren't aware of it. So I think we have some ways to go before we reach that point of bubble territory, to be honest.
Okay. What about futures markets? Because Bitcoin has just been added to a couple of them. Do you see the futures market helping or hurting Bitcoin in the long term?
Helping. You know why?
Why?
There's nothing better than what's called a short squeeze. So let's just say, so the whole idea of shorting the market is you believe it's topped out, it's gone too high, and people start shorting or selling it, and they're forced to buy it back later. Now, if we use the premise that the number of users that are out there is still relatively low and will continue to increase over time as people begin to discover that they should be in it, that they want to move into crypto, also as more platforms and exchanges begin to launch that make it easier for people to get started, then you're going to see more and more people coming in, and that will create a demand. Now, those who are on the short side or the negative side of crypto and Bitcoin in particular saying, it's too high already, and they start shorting it. Well, what happens when the coin starts to go up higher and higher and higher? These people are all forced to buy to close their positions because they've already sold it. And that will cause what's called a short squeeze that causes the price to go even higher, even faster. So I actually think the futures market is creating a future for us all in Bitcoin to go higher than we actually planned. So thank you, CME, for launching a futures market for all of us and taking us to the next level that probably wasn't planned to be as fast as it was.
No, it probably wasn't.
So, and to be fair, with trading, trading is up and down. It's not going to be a straight shot up. So if anybody thinks Bitcoin's just going to rise, and rise, of course it's not. There's going to be periods of time where people are taking profits and selling. And if the guys that are trading in the futures market are selling, it peaks and buying it back when it hits troughs, great. That's kind of normal trading behavior. And those that are playing a longer game of shorting and hoping it drops and it doesn't, and they're squeezing us to move back up even further up, great. But nobody should expect it's just a straight trajectory up. There has to be various forms of ups and downs and corrections. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a normal economy.
Right. Well, we just saw that happen last night. So at 7 o'clock, Coinbase released Bitcoin Cash onto their network. And Bitcoin went from like close to 20,000 to 15 and lower in some places, and everything just kind of fluctuated tremendously, and a lot of the exchanges froze.
In Western markets.
In Western markets, correct.
But in Asian markets, it was almost unfazed.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so there was some obvious weird arbitrage opportunities to try to buy, or trade the Bitcoin between two markets when it fluctuated so much. Thank God I was sleeping and I missed it all. And I woke up to my account value being just, 1% lower than it was the night before, fully unaware that I probably wouldn't have slept the whole night if this had happened.
Right.
But there was more fluctuation. Yeah, I would have hated to have been there. I'm glad you didn't wake me up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But there was, from what I've seen this morning, there was more fluctuation in the Western markets than in Asia.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, because it was very interesting, so Coinbase is what I was looking at most of the time, and it froze it. But it froze Bitcoin Cash trading at 8,000. But I was reading in other exchanges, wow. Bitcoin Cash was actually trading around like 2,000 at that time. So I don't know if it was just artificially inflated or what was happening with that.
So the thing with Bitcoin Cash that I find really interesting is that since they've done their fork from the primary Bitcoin, I've seen that as a group or as a company, they're really trying to transform or to take Bitcoin Cash to another level. I mean, I think it was recently, a week or 2 weeks ago, they announced that they were going to start to create some sort of debit cards so that you'd be able to walk around with a Bitcoin Cash card and use your card to actually spend in shops. So that already tells you there's a directional shift between what Bitcoin Cash is doing and what Bitcoin does, where Bitcoin's just a store of value like a gold or a currency, and Bitcoin Cash almost starts to move into the payment space, and I think it'll be really interesting to see where they go.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Is that something then you're watching closely, or let's say compare that to Litecoin and Ethereum, who are also starting to take off a bit more, and Litecoin is supposed to be like a faster Bitcoin on the very low level. But how do they compare with those, and how you value those two different exchanges?
Right. So Bitcoin Cash is already trying to implement a faster payment mechanism for micropayments. So in some respects, they almost become a competitor to Litecoin on some level, although no one's explicitly said that. I mean, I was looking at Bitcoin Cash when it was at 1,200 or 1,200 and thought, maybe I should get some, and I didn't do it. And then, of course, within days it was 15 and then 18, and then, as you say, hit 3,000. And I thought, oh my God, maybe I've missed the boat on this. But of course, we didn't really miss the boat because we know that there's going to be more user growth over time. Mm-hmm. So, Litecoin and Bitcoin Cash, I would say in some respects are like somewhat of competitors for micropayments, meaning small payments where you want to spend money at a shop for $2 or $3 or $4, euro, whatever, small payment transactions, where Bitcoin kind of struggles with that just because their transaction fees tend to be higher and they're more useful for large scale, payment transactions or just storing value. Ethereum, it really kind of sits in a different space because Ethereum, as we've talked about in previous episodes, is a platform. Mm-hmm. And it's a platform that's enabling companies to create smart contracts on top of it. So when you look at the potential growth of Ethereum, I think it's significantly greater than where Bitcoin goes, simply because as companies onboard onto the platform to start using Ethereum for creating smart contracts and working together to trade and operate in a more business context, or even from small business owners to small business owners using the Ethereum network and ERC20 wallets, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see significantly more transactions go through, which of course will increase the total value of Ethereum. And there's been a lot of discussions about what's called the flippening Have you heard about the Flippening?
I haven't. What's the Flippening?
Right, so there's a website you can actually Google where you look for the Flippening, and it's a calculation that shows the current value as a percentage of Ethereum and how far or close Ether to Bitcoin is. And at one point they were, getting close-ish, and now of course they've become quite far apart again. And the whole idea is, when will it flip and when will Ether be worth more than Bitcoin?
Sure. So do you think Ether has a little bit of a problem with like transaction speeds? Just because, there's CryptoKitties, which apparently is like bogging down the network, and a lot of people are talking about how a lot of things are happening really, really slowly now. How do you see that working itself through and Ether pushing past the kitty game?
Yeah, so, certainly the Ethereum team have multiple times spoken about their goal of being able to transact as fast as Visa with thousands upon thousands of transactions per second. Of course, they're not there now, but everything they're doing in terms of their roadmap of increasing speed and capacity is all about what they're trying to do. It's everything in their discussion about their future roadmap is about more volume, more transactions per second. So I think they're fully aware of the problem and they're trying to address it. And I think the fact that they're trying to do that is great. It's just important that they do, because that's going to make the difference between the success of the platform, like any, or people will find other things if it doesn't, speed up. But Bitcoin is the same. Bitcoin, it's sometimes up to an hour for 6 confirmations. Ether is fortunately faster than that. You can do many more confirmations in the same time. But at the end of the day, the problem remains the same. You want your money to move faster. And if you want to be able to transact faster, then you need to speed up your network and have more transactions per second. But certainly the Ethereum team everything publicly, they're fully aware of it, and they have a plan, and they're talking about future releases to solve that. Mm-hmm. Did you buy CryptoKitties, by the way?
No, I didn't buy CryptoKitties. I thought about it, but then...
You have 2 dogs, and you just couldn't bring yourself to get a cat.
I couldn't bring myself to get that, and I don't play a lot of game-type things on my phone, so I was like, it's just like one more thing I have to pay attention to, so I didn't. Did you jump on there and
I have 3 dogs. I'm not a cat person. If they had crypto doggies, I might have jumped in, or my little boys might have done it with me.
Perhaps that's an opportunity right now to start a new platform.
Crypto doggies. So if anybody's interested in talking to us about crypto doggies, just ping us on our Telegram chat and we'll have a separate conversation with you about it. And I'm not being serious. Maybe I am.
Maybe you are.
Who knows?
We'll
if somebody comes up with a good enough value proposition, Yuri, do you want to do crypto doggies?
Yeah. We've already talked about turkey coin, so why not add in crypto doggies?
Did you see there's another one called Milk Coin?
I did see Milk Coin because they showed up in my Facebook feed.
It made me concerned that they heard our turkey coin conversation and then went to start to mirror it. And I don't know if Milk Coin is a scam or not, but turkey coin's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing, and
the Butterball turkeys are going to have such a great track record of knowing where they are in the ledger.
They are. We're all going to know where our turkeys go and where they come from.
Every Thanksgiving, those turkeys are going to make it where they need to be.
Exactly. So a lot of people, of course, are buying Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin on exchanges, but what about your 401k? Is there a way... I don't know if it's smart or not, but is there a way to get involved in the cryptocurrency space through your 401k?
For Americans using their retirement funds. Right.
Yes.
So Yuri, there is a company called GBTC, which is the ticker for Bitcoin Investment Trust. And they're effectively designed to trade on Bitcoin, where it's supposed to be the price is 1/10 of a Bitcoin. So 1/10 of the Bitcoin price is supposed to be their price. Okay. And you can buy and sell that as part of your investment vehicles. I don't know how to do that within any individual portfolio. But interestingly enough, they're not trading at 1/10 right now, because if I look at the current price, they're trading at 3,000, which would imply a future value of 30,000 for Bitcoin, when actually if the current Bitcoin price is someplace around 17.5, they should be trading at 1,750.
Oh,
so
wow.
kind of interesting, because they're supposed to be trading as a tracker on a 1 to 10 ratio.
Yeah.
And it's not really working like that right now. They're trading at almost double, so it's almost 1 to 5.
Right. That's a little interesting. I mean,
So I'm not sure if I would recommend buying into that one because their future price is so much higher than the market, or maybe CME has missed it completely, offering their futures trading and not even being close to where GBTC is.
Yeah, that could be it.
I don't. It's interesting.
Yeah,
but that's the only thing I'm aware of that's really an effective company you can buy at the moment. There is actually another ETF that I think is called Mine for mining stuff, and I need to fact check that one actually. But there is something that's an ETF for mining, but I'm not sure what that. I don't know the details of it. I haven't looked into it at all.
Okay, well, we'll add that to our future episode because that one sounds interesting as well. When you look at the market and make buying decisions, are there other things that you factor in when deciding to pull the trigger and get more Ethereum or Litecoin or Bitcoin Cash?
So I mean, the main factors I look at with the primary coins like Bitcoin, Ether, I more or less know where I stand with those because I've been looking at them for a long time. I see the potential user growth with Bitcoin and Ethereum. I track how companies continue to adopt and use it as a platform for, creating their own smart contracts on top. So the adoption for Ether for me is sort of a no-brainer. I think what I see in particular with Litecoin is, first of all, Charlie Lee, who was the founder of Litecoin, had gone away for a while, come back. And since coming back, it's gained a lot of momentum. It moved from $90 up to $300 range in a very reasonably short period of time. So it is an alternative to buying Bitcoin. And I think part of the reason people have gone to Litecoin is just because it's cheaper and people want to be able to buy more coins. So if you want to buy one Bitcoin, you need to put $15,000 or $20,000 out. But if you want to buy one Litecoin, you can only spend $300. So you can buy 5 Litecoins instead of one Bitcoin. So there's some logic to why people are moving money into Litecoin. I like Litecoin. It's a nice, fast, easy to use platform. I don't use it in terms of transfer of value. I only use it as an investment for having coins. Bitcoin Cash is more interesting because it's a fork off of Bitcoin. So I haven't really been myself invested in that personally. I think it's always worth evaluating and tracking where they're going, what they're doing. The Bitcoin whale, a guy called Roger Ver, who was really big on Bitcoin, is now kind of thrust all of his energy into Bitcoin Cash, which is also interesting. So whether he's doing it for personal or for, logical, real reasons in terms of the coin's really going someplace, or he's doing it because the coin's cheaper, remains to be seen because, it's always hard to tell people's motives. But certainly I can see that there's some direction going with the coin in terms of, the fact that the company's doing something.
Okay.
But there's plenty of other coins as alternative coins out there that are all doing things. There's lots of discussions around different payment platforms. There's lots of discussions on media companies and sports companies. So there's plenty of room to look at in terms of where to invest, not just on the primary top 4 or 5 coins, but also in a whole range of alternative coins as companies that are actually doing things to add value and to transform the way we operate and work today.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of chat out there about what's going to happen next on Coinbase. And as we saw from last night, once Bitcoin Cash jumped on, suddenly so did its value. Do you spend any time thinking about, could Ripple jump on to the Coinbase platform and suddenly that all spike? Do you spend any time in that speculation, or do you just kind of let that slide by?
I don't really care because Coinbase, first of all, so that Ripple news came out of a fake news story from Korea. So if Ripple ends up being added in the end, that's great. But the reality is, here's the problem for me with anything like Coinbase. Coinbase is a platform for shifting back and forth between a cryptocurrency and fiat. And every time you want to change from coin A to coin B, you have to constantly go back to euros or dollars or pounds and then go back again to the next crypto. And the cost of doing that is so high, it's not even worth looking at it. So quite honestly, for me, the value of Coinbase is only to just get started and then move your coins to an exchange where you can buy whatever you want. So I'm not particularly concerned about it. I just think the only reason Coinbase would do it is just try to make more money. but for people who don't recognize that they're just being overcharged for changing between coins. Mm-hmm. The average transaction fee between coin A and B is typically 0.25%, and Coinbase is charging 3% plus.
Oh yeah.
So, it's not even like a comparison. So no, I don't spend my time looking at what Coinbase might or might not do. It's, I guess for people who want to start straight away into Ripple or Bitcoin Cash or other coins without going through the in-betweens, I could see that. Mm-hmm. And for me, the real value of Coinbase is not about the buy-sell. It's about the fact that they're pegging coins against the dollar, the euro, the yen, the pound. So you actually have a legitimate exchange rate between fiat currencies and the cryptocurrencies themselves.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So it's creating a market.
Yeah.
But more interesting, is that Bloomberg announced that they're now putting trackers in for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and I think a few others. But that's to me a more significant statement because what you're seeing now is Bloomberg themselves, who are what every trader uses for news and information about what's happening in the trading world, is now moving into the crypto world, adding various coins onto their platform, and that's probably just the beginning.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be amazing when that starts even rolling out.
Yeah. So to me, that's a much bigger story than anything about Coinbase and the Bitcoin Cash story.
Yeah, excellent.
Because it's more mainstream. It legitimizes that cryptocurrency is here to stay. And if Bitcoin's being put on Bloomberg, then I would say you definitely need to be in the coins that Bloomberg is already adding, because they're creating more legitimacy for traders to actually start working with it.
Yeah.
And then big money is going to move in. That'll drive the price up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great.
Over time.
Yeah. So looking at this, the potential is still astronomical because a lot of the big players haven't jumped in yet.
Well, I mean, John McAfee is still threatening to eat his own manhood if the price of Bitcoin doesn't reach a certain level within a certain period of time, and he keeps upping the number to a higher number. So 50,000, then it's 100,000, whatever it is. I mean, the numbers are pretty big.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, Tom Lee himself, the guy who's been doing a lot of the analysis and compared the growth of Facebook numbers to Bitcoin, has also given, more moderate but reasonable growth trajectory targets for Bitcoin based on a huge number of statistical measures, which are, statistical, but as long as the numbers continue to hold, it's a good reason to continue to just go with it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate this. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. When thinking about the value of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Litecoin, are there other things that you consider that I may have forgot to ask about?
Well, Yuri, you always come up with something like that, and you say, "Come on, you've forgotten something, haven't you?" I mean, I think the only takeaway for me is don't just jump in and buy things. There's always two parts to buying. One is make sure you know the technical status, the technical analysis side of the coins. There are people out there doing it on Twitter, and there are people doing it out there on YouTube. So it's just good to know where the coin is relative to trading patterns. Mm-hmm. The other thing is just check the news and make sure you know what's going on, and make sure they're mainstream news channels. Don't just go by something you see on, some rumor channel, fake news channel or other. Just try to make sure you do your fact checking before you get in and buy things, and don't buy on speculation. Buy it because you believe in the long-term value of where these coins and companies are going. And then once you're in, everyone has their own reasons for trading, for buying and selling, but make sure you do your fact checking first before you get started.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate your time on this one.
You're welcome. And if you're wondering, you didn't ask me why I lost my voice, so it was because I was screaming when I saw Bitcoin go from 15 to 20,000 and then drop all the way back down again. That's why I've got a scratchy voice today.
That definitely is a good reason to lose your voice.
This was really fun today. I really appreciate the chat, Yuri, and I'm really excited about our next chat as well. So, listen in next week, everyone, on the Coin Chat, where we talk about how to get started in mining. It's going to be a bit of fun because I've built my own mine. I've done a lot of work to figure out how it works. It's not all that hard. It just takes a little bit of time to understand all the basics, and we'll just have a chat and talk through it. To the moon. Until next time.